Good mythical afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Ayala, live with another vlog for you. This is 11-1, Early Industries and Inventions and Mr. Ayala presentation. As always, please make sure you're writing notes, and then you place your comment in the discussion board or doobly-doo, wherever it may be this year. And as always, sit back, relax, and view this as many times as you need to do to be successful. So when we start off, we're talking about the free enterprise system and factories. So we do know that the War of 1812 helped bring about the Industrial Revolution in the United States. And because we could import items, we decided to start manufacturing our own items, mostly in New England. And these handmade tools were replaced with machines. So we went from building everything by hand to using machines. Very, very different, much quicker, and much more efficient. So we start with the factory system developing. And what this does, this brings workers, machines, and their energy source, usually water or steam, under one roof. And what happens is that we get a large amount of people start shifting from our agricultural areas into our cities. And because of this and the War of 1812, the North became more industrialized and became wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. And it's like the South was about cash crops and slaves, and the North at this time started to become more about the factory system and individual workers. So the factories came to New England. Excuse me, please make sure to write this down. The Industrial Revolution originally began in England, in Britain. And later it comes over to the United States, and in particular New England or the northern part of the United States on our eastern seaboard. And the reasons were, well, one, water power was easily available. I mean, there's lots of rivers, easy action to the ocean for trade, and there was a large willing labor force that keep immigrating into the United States, so they need a place to work. Samuel Slater actually built the first factory in Pawtucket, Rhode Island in 1790. So just a little did you know. From there, we're going to look at the Lowell Mills and how the Lowell Mills in particular only wanted to hire women. And these Lowell Mills used water power to spin to spin cotton into yarn. So they would take some of the cotton from the southern areas, bring them to the north, and then the Lowell Mills, the women would spin it into yarn to be creating clothing. And they hired women who lived on company-owned boarding houses. So they worked about 12.5 hours a day in a very loud environment. There was very high wages for women at that time, but you lived in a very strict environment. You're only allowed to do certain things on certain days. You have to be in bed at a certain time, kind of like a dorm room. And later, the profits end up decreasing because of more competition. So the paying environment worsens as we get further along. And that's one thing we do need to be aware that we will start modifying how we look at our industries later on in our history. So we started to look at new ways to manufacture things in 1797, the United States government hired Eli Whitney to manufacture muskets. And he came up with this idea of interchangeable parts. And this allowed the muskets to be made exactly the same. Instead of being made by hand and having little differences here and there, this allowed the standardization of those consumer goods. It made it so that the same, let's say, cable for your cell phone would be able to be interchangeable among different types of cell phones. So instead of having to buy a whole new unit because it's individualized, you can just buy the part that you need. And it allowed the consumer goods to be cheaper to produce, cheaper to repair, faster to make, and you can actually have less skilled workers, because if everything's exactly the same, it's much easier to produce. And you don't need the skilled workers with special labor skills to make this better. So then we get to moving people, goods, and messages. In 1807, Robert Fulton uses a steam engine, which was created in Britain, and invented a steamboat that could travel against the current. So he ramped up the horsepower in the steamboats, and it allowed us to move up and down the rivers much faster, much quicker. So as we were expanding westward and we were getting bigger geographically, our technology allowed us to actually shrink a little bit. So it was easier to send messages, people, information, and goods all over the U.S. So we started becoming more like one country instead of different sections. And one section of the country could transfer goods to another so that they could use their specialized industries or crops or cash crops or whatever they did to make it a little bit better, and we didn't have to import as many items. In 1837, it's actually Samuel Morse invents the telegraph, and what a telegraph does, it's a precursor to the cell phone and the telephone. And what happens, there would be these long wires stretched all across the country. And one person would use Morse code, which is just short and long bursts of electricity to send messages through a long wire from one side to another. So have you ever heard that like beep, 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 beep noise? That's Morse code through the telegraph. And what happens is because of the steamboat that allowed us to travel faster, and the telegraph, which allowed us to communicate faster, we ended up with more national unity. Because people in South Carolina were able to talk to the people in New York, who were able to talk to the people in Missouri, in Ohio, Kentucky, all because of the telegraph. And then if you needed to travel, it was much quicker. Instead of taking months to get over items, you just hop on a steamboat, much faster, take about a week. Then we have technology starts to improve farming also. So John Deere, yes, the guy who's more known for making tractors and lawnmowers now, invents the first lightweight steel plow. So allows the ox or the horse to be able to plow more fields more efficiently because it was a lighter piece of equipment and it was stronger. The mechanical reaper and threshing machine also made harvesting wheat easier. So think about like, the Grim Reaper with that big scythe and sickle that he holds, that would be a mechanical version. So more or less it was on a wheel, spun horizontally, and would chop down the wheat. And then the threshing machine would clean the wheat off and make it much easier and faster to harvest. So what would happen is the farms in the Midwest would feed the factory workers in the Northeast or New England, and they would and then the New England people would take the cotton from the South and the Southeast and use it to make their items. So everything started to become more connected. Think about the idea of that Florida makes lots of orange juice, Iowa makes a lot of beef. So for us to get our beef, it comes down here, and for them to get their orange juice, it goes up to Iowa. Very kind of easy. Then we go to the cotton boom. So Eli Whitney, the guy who also invented interchangeable parts, invents the cotton gin. This was a machine that cleaned cotton faster and quicker. So if you've ever seen cotton, it's got a whole bunch of seeds inside of it, and it was a pain in the rear end to clean. It was such a high labor cost that it became very prohibited. And what happens is, because of the cotton gin, we go from 1 pound to be cleaned a day to about 50 pounds a day. So you could have much more cotton fields, and you could be able to harvest that cotton at a much faster and quicker pace with less labor needed. So this does actually make slavery increase because of the cotton gin, because it made it more efficient so you can have more slaves. Slavery was actually decreasing prior to the cotton gin, but afterwards it's much bigger. So the last thing is we are going to talk a little bit about the free enterprise system, and this uses the idea of capitalism, which is when individuals and businesses own property and choose how to use it. So in other words, it's about the freedom of choice, that us, the people, get to choose, not the government, what to do with our wealth and our capital. Where am I going to put a factory? Where do I want to put my house? Where do I want to go shop? I don't have a government going, you must put a McDonald's right here because that's what I said so. No, you can put it wherever you want it based on, what was the need of the people in the area. And that way you could choose using your wealth and your capital or your skills where and what you want to do. So there's some image sources, as our Weebly question for this week is pretty simple. Out of the few items that we spoke about, the mechanical reaper, the cotton gin, the steamboat, the telegraph, and the factory system, which one do you think had the biggest effect on our lifestyle in the United States? And explain your answer. Please put that in the doobly-doo in the discussion, and as always, don't forget to be awesome.